What is the long-term future for mining in South Africa, particularly platinum mining? The PGM metals, platinum group metals, the basket price of those has been rising over time, as much as 20% up this year. Platinum, 50% of Anglo American Platinum's production, is under a lot of pressure. However, the basket price is good and the prospects for South Africa's PGM sector should be positive. Chris Griffith is the Chief Executive of Anglo American Platinum. So if we're modernising and we're mechanising, what is the long-term outlook for jobs? Because already from the early 90s until now, the mining sector in South Africa has been denuded significantly of job opportunities.
So Bruce, I think for Anglo Plats, from here on, I guess we'll actually see a growth in jobs. So this year, as we've now taken over 50% of Mototolo, we would have seen our own labour numbers increase. That won't be new labour for the industry, but the growth in the projects going forward, we're likely to see a growth in some labour. So I think for Anglo Plats now, all the hard work over the last couple of years has really put us in a position that we are where we need to be. We'll grow from here onwards. The life of Mogalakwena, for example, is over 100 years before we even go underground. All of the rest of
Explain that. The life of a mine is 100 years before you go underground. That's worth exploring.
So that's how big the resource is at Mogalakwena. At its existing production level, either we could have twice the size that it is now, which is probably where we're going to get to, and then it will still have 50 years worth of life. That's how big this resource is. And then you get to about 500 meters below surface, and then you need to go underground. And then we've probably got the same scale of opportunity at Mogalakwena. So the opportunity, the way we talk about it internally, is this could be the Pilbara, which is in iron ore terms, of platinum. So that's how massive this opportunity is at Mogalakwena.
And people also forget that South Africa is gifted with one of the world's biggest resources of platinum. Between us and Russia, we control, 80% of the global market?
Correct. So Anglo Plats itself, we own 40% of the world PGM resources. And so we're not about to run out of resources in South Africa. And the opportunities, the portfolio that we've put together, we have no mine that is in our portfolio that has got less than 30 years worth of life. So we've got now low cost, more mechanized operations, with the exception of Amandelbult. Low cost, highly productive operations that from now can grow and have got long lives. And that's the benefit of the portfolio that we've put together post the restructuring over the last few years.
What about new exploration and new investment in new production? Because on the one hand, you don't want to produce too much, flood the market, impact the price. On the other, you want longevity and you want to ensure that you remain an active corporate citizen in South Africa beyond the responsibility of delivering profits to shareholders. We've all got a responsibility of creating opportunities, paying the taxes, creating the growth environment that we so desperately need in this country.
So the benefit about our resources is that we've got a fairly good understanding of what we have. And as I said, we've got very, very substantial life resources. And we've got mines that every single one of them can still be scaled. So we don't need to go look in greenfields areas. And we'll continue doing exploration on our existing footprints. But we don't need to go. We have in the past explored in China, Russia, Brazil. And none of what we've seen there matches anything that we have here. So we've got the resources, we've got the portfolio. We've got to make sure we've got an environment that we can continue investing in in those portfolios.
That we'll talk about in just a moment. What you also need to ensure is that you've got a market into the future. As technology changes, as technology moves, what does the future demand for PGM metals look like? PGMs could be seen as very 20th century technologies as the world moves into electrically powered cars and all of that sort of stuff. I mean, is there a future market for this great resource that you're tapping into?
So one of the things there are two fundamental things to think about when you think about PGMs. First of all, they are the most remarkable metals in themselves. So they have got great catalytic properties. So they're used in almost every chemical reaction there is. They just speed up reactions. They make reactions happen. And that's why you see them in so many, in autocatalysts, in industrial uses, in things like medical uses, for cancer, for treating cancer. So there's got so many, just because of the amazing nature of the metals. The fact is that they completely corrosion free, means you can use them in the harshest of environments. the fact that you can coat, for example, turbine blades and operate them at high temperatures, means the metals themselves are the most amazing metals. And that in itself means that people will want to use them for generations to come.
But you've got to justify that, and you've got to convince people that they shouldn't be looking for alternative technologies, which is quite a tough ask. I mean, you're committing $50 million to studying, to new projects, to investigate future uses of platinum. That looks like a self-defense mechanism, if you like.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. And then the second thing you want to keep in mind is the fact is actually you can convince people to use more platinum by great marketing techniques. So, for example, jewelry.
You're learning from the De Beers story, aren't you? I mean, De Beers in the 1950s created a diamond market from diamonds are a girl's best friend, diamonds are forever. Well, those sorts of payoff lines created demand for diamond jewelry, which previously had not been as significant. You're planning the same sort of strategies then for platinum.
Exactly, and platinum is one of the commodities you can do that in. So no matter how much marketing you do, you're unlikely to convince someone to use more coal. But you can do that in platinum. And so we do spend our time focusing on sort of three key areas. Jewelry is the most obvious of those. And a new exciting market is India. So you never would have thought in a yellow metal market of India.
India, of course, is traditionally a very big gold market. People on certain holidays buy lots of gold, and it's regarded as a great store of wealth.
That's exactly right. Now, for the young up-and-coming Indians, we're able to convince them. But they don't have to be like their parents, and they can use the flavour of millennials that always want to be different to their parents, but that can still have now a metal of love rather than a store of wealth. So this very clever marketing has already we're growing our market in India by 20% per year. We started seeing growth again in the US. We started seeing growth again in China.
But demand from an investment perspective, and people happily keep a gold Kruger Rand and put it in a bottom drawer. No matter what happens to the gold price, it's regarded as a store of wealth. And over time, it doesn't generate any interest. It doesn't pay any dividends. And it's just a hunk of metal that people have faith in because it goes back to biblical times. There is a store of value in gold. People believe it. Platinum hasn't developed the same mystique from an investment perspective. If somebody produced a platinum Kruger Rand, it wouldn't sell nearly as well. Why not?
I think it's because we haven't marketed that. So the fact is in the East, so for example in Japan, platinum has been a store of wealth for generations. And they've got investment plans. For example, you can every month put $100 in and you'll get a fraction of some platinum that'll go into a bank somewhere. And you can draw and use that as whenever you need to. So there are parts of the world that platinum is seen as a store of wealth. And the fact is that we haven't worked hard at generating an interest in investment in platinum.
Have you needed to, as an industry?
We haven't for many years. But since the global financial crisis, and there's been some structural changes in the nature of the uses for platinum, so I think we've been fairly lazy around investment as an industry. But over the last few years, we've created the World Platinum Investment Council, and as an industry, we're now putting money into creating and telling the story of investment in platinum.
Chris Griffith, as Chief Executive of Anglo American Platinum, controls 40% of the world's PGM market. But is the South African environment conducive to long-term production of PGM metals? Talking about the mining charter, of course. Mosebenzi Zwane, the former Mineral Resources Minister, brought expansion in the mining sector to a halt when he came out with some draconian measures in a mining charter. Since then, the mining charter has been drafted, redrafted and redrafted once again under Gwede Mantashe. The industry has been fairly quiet and fairly muted in its response to this particular mining charter. I wonder whether or not, in the long term, it is conducive to the sort of picture Chris Griffith is painting for us this evening. More in a moment.